Behavior is very important, but we must understand behavior to apply restraint. So equine restraint is for the safety of not only our patients, but for us as well. This is a good example of restraining a foal. This is a young horse and they do not have any training most likely. You will need closed-toed boots if you were restraining this because they have sharp little hooves and they will dance and prance around. One thing is the head is very far away. There's a zone in between that you don't want to be because that horse, if it moves its head around or it's trying to move, so you either need to have your head right next to the head for restraint. That way, when the horse moves, you are moving with it. You can also grab underneath the tail. The tail is very strong. We actually lift horses up by the tail in surgical procedures, so don't be afraid to grab them and be holding and lifting by the tail if your doctor requires you to do so in order to maintain control of your equine patient. Do please read the restraint notes. All of these things are very important, and I know that there is an error in the restraint notes. So if you can find that error, come to me, ask if that is correct, then I will give you a reward for that. So please read over the restraint notes. This goes with the exposure they have to humans and how they are maybe in our service because they have insurance over them, which I did not mention when I was talking about the introductory. Or maybe I did, but insurance purposes is what we have to deal with. We'll talk about that maybe more in the veterinary side. And what are they being used for is how well they are with certain restraint. So in general, a horse should be able to do these basic things, but sometimes they are young horses that still need their vaccines and they've only had a halter on them at minimum. Or maybe they haven't and you're doing a farm call. All right, the more experience you have, the better it will be, but being calm around a horse does give you the biggest advantage. Lifting a leg is a form of restraint. We call that like a psychological form of restraint. You could also maybe think it as a physical because you are technically lifting the leg up. The reason why they call that is because the horse thinks it cannot move because it only has 3 legs. So if you are doing something by yourself, this is a way to get the horse to have its leg lifted and you're using just something very quick release that you can let go of. So the halter. So if we look at the skeletal skull, they have very fragile nose bones. You need to make sure that the halter is placed over those nose bones. If it is too low and the horse rears up, that can break those bones. If those bones break, then we cause inflammation. Inflammation leads to swelling, and horses are obligate nasal breathers. And if we have swelling on the nose, then we have suffocation or they cannot get air. There are flat halters, which we like to use in the veterinary practice because these ones touch on nerves and there's a facial nerve that can cause paralysis. So if a horse needs to be laid down or pressure needs to be applied, they cannot lay on these rope halters because it will cause paralysis to the facial nerve. These are good for training, these not halters, because of where they apply pressure, the horse tends to listen to them. The near side is the term for the left. So we either approach at the point of the shoulder or 45 degrees in front of it. That way the horse cannot strike out at you. Never be directly in front of a horse. Carrying the lead rope is one thing. We want to, if we have a long lead rope, we want to fold it back and forth. We never want to wrap it around in case the horse were to get really scared or run. They are more powerful than what you will be able to do, so never wrap the rope around. We are always on the same side as the veterinarian unless it's directed that we need to be on the other side. Remember, I said sometimes scratching behind the ears is not something that they'll like if they are head shy. All right, so this is for leading the horse. Sometimes horses will lead right next to you. Sometimes they will be a slight little bit behind you, which could be ideal because you are trying to guide them a certain direction. But you never want the horse to get too far in front of you. So if you were back here at the stomach, that would not be appropriate leading of the horse. Now we'll talk about the slip knot and we will practice these in class. And 2 to 3 feet of rope, but if the horse can reach the ground, they can get a paw up and over that. So then that would be them getting tangled up in the rope. Cross ties is another form that horses use where it mimics their movement from either left or right, but these can be dangerous because if they still want to turn their body around, then their head gets tangled in. So to train a horse to cross tie these guys have the lead rope so they are ready to unhook, and hopefully there are not quick release latches there. All right, so here is the twitch. It is part of like squeezing something to apply restraint methods. So you can squeeze the ear, you can squeeze the piece of the neck, which is good because that applies pressure here. So when you do an injection right next to it, the horse does not notice so much. Then we have the nose twitch. This one over here is called the humane twitch, and this one is a chain twitch. This actually works by releasing endorphin rushes through the horse and calms them down that way. Take a moment, pause here, and look up how the twitch releases endorphins and works in the horse. All right, now that you're back, you can watch this video of applying the twitch, and she actually talks about some very important things of where you hook this twitch, because if a horse moves, they do have now a metal weapon on the tip of them. And so this twitch is applied differently and more effectively than the previous twitch. This could be something that is not properly applied because the horse could just pull its lip through there. Then we also have chain shakes or stud shakes, and there are different areas to apply them. You could go underneath, over top, or sometimes they apply right here if the horse needs extra restraint. Hobbles, many different ways of keeping a horse to prevent them from kicking. This is a good one that they can sometimes even have when they're out on pasture. If there's a horse that likes to kick at other horses, as soon as they kick, they just pull on their front leg and pretty soon they learn not to kick. In the veterinary medical facility, we use stocks. So chutes are for cattle, stocks are for horses, and we use stocks to be around them. Sometimes they have doors on the side. Even though you are next to the horse, be careful, they could still even kick you through the side. All right. Tail tying for reasons that we may need to, especially with reproductive medicine. Sometimes we wrap the tail in a form of like a loose ace bandage or vet wrap, and then there is a method we'll learn how to tie the tail and how to then secure it around the horse's neck. A horse should probably be trained to handle this such thing, but the purpose of that tail tie is when we pull on their tail to lift them up from anesthesia. So this is a recovery room for when horses wake up from anesthesia or when they're going down from anesthesia. Because it is padded, the horse's head is padded, but we need to be able to move away safely, so they have pulley systems where they hook onto the head and the tail. Then carrying the horse into the surgical suite, we apply things to probably hobbles, and then a chain to have a machine that carries and lifts them. They have the hooves and the tail wrapped for sterility. And remember, when all else fails, we can always use sedation.